Welcome back everyone, it's me, Matsmas. I hope you're having an excellent day and I really appreciate you stopping by on today's video. We are talking about military aviation, the Huey helicopter. This has been a very highly requested helicopter video that you guys have wanted me to make, and I thought I'd finally get round to doing it, but I would not be able to make this video possible today without the kind support and donation of footage from Sean Adams' YouTube channel. He's done a fantastic job of creating such beautiful footage of this gorgeous helicopter. I strongly encourage you to go check out the rest of his channel. He is a helicopter pilot. He does some really good camera work. Please go check it out. I have put the description of the YouTube channel in the links box below, so go check that out please. So thank you again, Sean. I really appreciate you letting me showcase this helicopter to my viewers and hopefully some of your viewers too with your footage. So let's talk a little bit about this fascinating aircraft. Now, let's just be quite honest here. When speaking about the Vietnam War, there's a couple of things that normally come to mind. Fortunate Son, Full Metal Jacket, amongst other things. But really, what really comes to mind for me, first of all, as an image, is this helicopter, the Huey helicopter. Every war has some iconic machine that exceeded expectations or has always been a staple of that conflict. For the Vietnam War, though, that title for sure goes to the Bell UH-1 Iroquois, named the Huey due to its original designation, HU-01. The UH-01 was designed in 1955 and produced between 1957 and 1986, and, as you probably well know, it is still actually being used around the world to this day. As an icon of the Vietnam War and an angel of mercy for American troops who fought there, the Bell UH-1 Iroquois, affectionately known as the Huey, has gone on to become the most recognized helicopter in the world. 50 years after its birth, the Huey remains the only aircraft to be used by all branches of the United States military, including the Coast Guard. To American troops who were exposed to constant enemy fire, the Huey and those who flew them were angels from on high. To the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese army, they were angels of death. For those who flew on it, or actually flew it in general, the Hueys is embedded into their souls. In the eyes of the average 19-year-old ground soldier in Vietnam, the Huey represented nothing less than divine intervention. They were either recovering soldiers who had been killed, passing on information, whether it be via the ground or via the air in communications, passing on ammunition, resupplying, pulling troops in and out of battle. The list goes on and on. The Huey, quote, was our best friend, says Freddie Clark, who fought in the legendary 1/9th Walking Dead Marine Unit in Vietnam. Quote, it was a big, raggedy thing, but it took you here and there. There's no way we could have fought the war without it, unquote. Pitted against an elusive enemy that utilized a complex network of underground tunnels to enable them to disappear into the jungle, American troops in Vietnam realized quickly that they would have to develop new tactics to gain the high ground, literally and figuratively. Gaining the high ground was exactly what the Huey was designed to do. During the Vietnam War, 7,000 Hueys were deployed in numerous forms and roles. Out of that number, over 3,000 were lost. From the start of mass production in 1960, over 16,000 were built in total, including civilian versions. The privilege of being the first to use the Hueys is credited to the 101st Airborne Division. From the evaluation process, the UH-1 quickly earned the trust and respect of the Army and was pressed into service very quickly. The first Hueys to reach Vietnam arrived in 1962 and operationally in 1963, and soon became an iconic symbol of the United States' involvement in Southeast Asia. The overall performance was very impressive. Even so, the UH-1 was constantly being upgraded and being made better at the time. The UH-101B version had a more powerful engine and was able to carry more men. Next, the UH-1C had a bigger fuel tank and new rotor system. The Huey was adaptable enough that it could be used to test pretty much every possible weapon that could be attached, and I mean that in every sense of the word. They tried just about everything to turn this thing into not only a true transport or medevac, but into a complete gunship. Many upgrades were pretty much homemade by the troops in the war zone, whether it be strapping machine guns onto the sides, rockets, they did everything, and I literally mean everything. There's even stories of laws being put in stacks of 10 aside and having a trigger mechanism that would be able to fire the law anti-tank weapons from the side of the aircraft. I'm not kidding, these are actual things that apparently happened. It's pretty impressive to know that they just, retrofitted these things as best as they could. The UH-01 gunships were commonly referred to as hogs. A transport version of this helicopter was named Slick due to the lack of weapons pods, and helicopters used for medical evacuation were dust-offs. Finally, the Iroquois, a multi-task variant, really ended the list, but they could all be configured into their own variants and swapped out parts to be any of one of those configurations. Able to fly at over 124 miles per hour, it proved to be an indispensable asset during military operations in Vietnam. Its light construction and high maneuverability turned out to be priceless in the Asian environment. There was no other conflict where the role of helicopters was so important. Over the entire war, Hueys conducted over 30 million flights, thus coining the new term of the War of Helicopters, and it truly was. Now, I'm not going to speak too much specifically on the war in Vietnam, of course that could be a whole new video in itself, but to say that this helicopter pretty much assisted every single operation and potential battle is an understatement. It was the backbone of the US military might of the time. The service as a pilot of a UH-1 had some pros and cons. While one was able to admire the evergreen view underneath you and avoid the hell on earth that was going on below, the chance of survival was half that of ordinary infantrymen. That's because North Vietnamese troops were particularly determined when it came to shooting down these helicopters. On some occasions, the enemy spared US soldiers on purpose, only having a chance of bringing down one more Huey as it flew to pick up a stranded man. An AK-47 was enough for the task. However, despite the risk involved being in control of this flight machine, the US Army couldn't complain about lack of volunteers. Until this day, the Huey is one of the most recognized helicopters and disputably one of the most attractive, especially for all those who were saved by it. And this is why it appealed so much to the soldiers of the time and the air crewmen that piloted it. They wanted to be a part of that legacy in flying such a beautiful aircraft, whether it be in combat or elsewhere. Of course, as a gunship, it was extremely crude. It was actually able to engage targets by basically using a grease pencil and marking an X on the canopy underneath you, and that would basically be how you aim to shoot the rockets or weapon systems. There wasn't much to it, folks. It was very simple, very easy to use. But all that hardware did come at a cost. Pilots of Huey gunships had difficulty keeping up with the speediest slicks that they were supposed to escort. Loaded down with guns and ammunition, the lifting power of the UH-1C gunship could hardly pull the slack out of your shorts, said Jeff Staten, a helicopter pilot who flew in Vietnam and is now the director of the Army's Test and Evaluation Command. In 1966, the Army quickly fielded a private venture from Bell, a purpose-designed gunship with the same transmission and rotor system as the UH-1C. The new Huey Cobra, flown by the Army and Marines, was armed with 3,000 pounds of rockets, grenades, guns, and ammunition, but was nearly twice as fast as the original Huey. Early in the Vietnam War, when comparatively few troops were on the ground, wounded soldiers were usually evacuated by the same assault helicopters that brought them to the battlefield. But as troop strength increased and conflict escalated, this space-available method proved inadequate. In response, the Army began to train pilots and crewmen in basic emergency medicine and trauma management, and assigned them to fly rescue missions specifically in unarmed helicopters marked with red crosses. Pilots learned to give shots and about saline solutions for wounds, and about burns and basic elements of first aid. The radio call sign Dust-Off, randomly selected from a codebook, became the universal sign for the Vietnam for helicopters flying medical evacuations. However, of all the helicopter flying in Vietnam, the Dust-Off flying was the most dangerous of all. Between 1962 and 73, 207 medical evacuation crewmen were killed, even though there were never more than 140 dedicated air ambulance flying helicopters at any single period during the war. Despite the hazards, an average American serviceman could expect to be airlifted to a hospital environment less than an hour after being wounded, and fewer than 1% of soldiers who survived 24 hours died. In 1963, the UH-1 was being produced at approximately 20 per month. By the end of 1967, that figure had risen to 160 per month, giving ample proof of its combat effectiveness. One of the immediate virtues of the aircraft was its actual durability. One of the operators of the Huey, Freddie Clark, described it, quote, "I rode on Hueys that looked like someone had beaten it all over with a hammer. Some were full of so many bullet holes that when we were in the air you could actually see sparks flying out of some of them," unquote. While serving in the Army as part of a mechanized infantry unit, Private Nathaniel Walker was wounded when his armored personnel carrier hit a mine during the Viet Cong ambush. He was later evacuated on a Huey. Quote, "When you heard the rotors of Hueys coming, you knew that you were right," he said. "To see that there was a sigh of relief, hell was all over and you were going home," unquote. It's safe to say that the soldiers and the aircrew of these aircraft really did rely upon them to every sense of the word. In previous wars, many combat wounded died because they could not get life-saving medical attention in time. The Huey as an ambulance really did reduce combat deaths overall during Vietnam. Since that time, the Huey has gone on to become a symbol of American fighting spirit and technological development. The UH-1 gave birth to the AH-1 Cobra, which in turn birthed the AH-64. The H-60 and the CH-53 are also based on the UH-1 concept. The oldest rotary wing aircraft still in use by the United States is currently in combat in Iraq and Afghanistan. The aircraft has been amazingly utilized by over 100 foreign militaries around the globe. It is also used by law enforcement, hospitals, media outlets, and civil search and rescue. From the skies of Vietnam to Grenada, Operation Desert Storm, Bosnia, and the global war on terrorism, the Huey has been relied upon to protect the United States and other countries from enemies both foreign and domestic. When troops needed crucial supplies and ammunition during the Vietnam War, it was the Huey they saw. When Marines needed to be evacuated in the aftermath of the Beirut bombing in Lebanon, it was the Huey that transported them. When troops went into the Sunni Triangle in Iraq, the Huey was the last thing that some insurgents saw. And when the stranded residents of New Orleans needed rescuing from the wrath of Hurricane Katrina, it was the Huey that plucked them from their rooftops. Not too bad, overall, for a 50-year-old. It's safe to say the Huey helicopter is a staple military aviation aircraft. It really benchmarked nearly all military aviation helicopters for the US military beyond its service life. The fact it still flies today and does such a fantastic job is a credit to those who flew it, crewed it, and were transported by it throughout the generations. I must say, of all the helicopters that I've ever seen being produced around the world, this really does bring somewhat of a tear to my eye, knowing of how much support it really has given to people around the world and still to this day does. You know, when you look at the Huey, you do obviously do, for the most part, think of Vietnam. I know I do for sure, but there is a lot more to it than that. I recently did a video also on the Black Hawk helicopter and how much respect I have for that. But of all the transport helicopters and support helicopters I can think of, this really does come across as the staple element of helicopter aviation superiority when it comes to transport aviation. It really is just incredible. I would love to fly in one. Never been able to really have the chance. I know we do here in Canada have our variant and variation of this aircraft, which is the Griffin. There is 100 different types of variants of this aircraft, and I could spend the entire video telling you as to what they are, but I really don't think that's the purpose of today's video. I really just wanted to discuss, a little bit about its history, the features that it has, what it can do, and the real sense of pride that people have with this aircraft and how important it has been in history in providing help, support, defending freedom. Of course, whether you disagree or agree with the Vietnam War is a different story wholeheartedly, but at the end of the day, the fact that this helicopter did exactly, literally exactly what they wanted it to do, and still to this day does what people want it to do, is a testament to its design and its flawlessness, I would say, in being such a good transport helicopter. Of course, any aircraft has its faults, but in my eyes, I think it deserves a huge amount of respect, and I want to say a massive shout out to everyone who has served, still serve, or have served on this aircraft. Truly, you must have a huge sense of pride in the aircraft and love for it, because if I was serving on it, I haven't even been on it, but I can say for myself, I know I would fall in love with it. It's just an incredible piece of military engineering. Anyway, folks, thank you so much for joining me today. I really do appreciate it. Some of you may be wondering why a lot of my videos are currently on private. Currently, I have some complications with YouTube right now, so just stay tuned. We're going to work on trying to get those videos back up. Unfortunately, this is the world that I live in. I feel right now I'm actually being put into a really difficult spot without any control of my own. It's really unfortunate, but it is the way it is. Sometimes when you're producing content, some things and some situations you just can't control. I'm trying my very best to create content that is fair and that does the justice of those who have produced content also on this platform, but unfortunately there is also sometimes miscommunications, problems that can occur, whether it be YouTube or other users. So we're trying our best to fix this situation, but for the meantime, just stay tuned. We'll be producing new content for you guys to take a look at, and we'll see how it goes from there. Once again, thank you so much to Sean for providing me this footage, an absolutely fantastic video for me to do today with this kind of footage. It's an absolutely beautiful aircraft. I hope you all have a wonderful day. If you did enjoy today's today's video, I would strongly encourage you to hit the little bell button by the subscribe button so you can be notified next time. Also, if you want to be supporting my channel, I would really appreciate you go check out my Patreon page. Thank you to everyone who has been donating towards there. I really cannot thank you enough. Also, some of you have also been donating to my PayPal link, which is also in the description box below. So thank you again for doing that also. And I hope to see you all again on the next video. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Take care during these difficult times, and I'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.